Victor Wembanyama is in the middle of his first NBA Finals, but that's not what's got everyone talking. After Draymond Green appeared to question the way Wemby plays the game, the Spurs superstar has finally responded. And now what started as a comment is turning into something much bigger. Let me break it down. The clobbering that Oklahoma City Thunder guard Jared McCain took in the final minutes of Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals trickled down from a demand by Spurs star Victor Wembanyama. The 7'4" center was caught whispering hard foul to teammates Bismack Biyombo and Mason Plumlee as he exited the game with his team trailing by 14 with 2:20 remaining. That word whispered, not shouted, is everything. Wemby didn't punch anyone. He didn't jaw at anyone. He just walked off the floor and said 2 words to the men who were checking in. And then those men went to work. An NBC broadcast angle appeared to show Wembanyama telling his teammates to deliver hard fouls late in Game 5. Moments later, Plumlee delivered a hard elbow to Jared McCain from behind during a screen, sending the Thunder guard to the floor. Not long after, Biyombo also committed a strong foul on McCain during a drive, further fueling the controversy. The sequence was precise. Wemby whispers, 2 veterans check in. McCain gets clobbered twice inside 2 minutes. And the whole thing was caught on NBC's cameras for the world to see. The new clip of Wembanyama from Game 5 surfaced during Game 6, with Wembanyama seeming to mouth hard foul to Plumlee. Hard foul was the message sent to Mason Plumlee, Bismack Biyombo, and you saw just that. NBC's Mike Tirico said during the Spurs' eventual 118-91 win. That call from Tirico on live national TV turned a sideline moment into a national conversation overnight. While most of the attention had been around how the game was officiated, a suspicious clip involving Wembanyama and the Spurs' big men, Bismack Biyombo and Mason Plumlee, went viral on social media. As Wembanyama was checking out of the game with just over 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, the Spurs superstar could be seen whispering something to Biyombo and Plumlee. Social media went berserk. Both players instantly picked up hard fouls on Jared McCain and 1 foul on Alex Caruso. It happened that fast. The instruction goes in, the instruction gets executed, and a kid who spent the night scorching OKC as one of the rare bright spots in an otherwise dead game is now getting clobbered in the open court while the final buzzer is still 4 minutes away. And here's the thing about Jared McCain. McCain had become a critical component of this series for Oklahoma City. The Thunder were down their second and third best shot creators in Jalen Williams and AJ Mitchell. But in OKC's Game 3 and 5 wins, he scored 44 total points. He got his first start of the playoffs in Game 5, and that decision helped the Thunder reclaim the series lead as he scored 20 points in the 127-114 win. This wasn't just a bench player taking a hard foul. This was the guy who had become OKC's lifeline. The guy filling the hole left by 2 injured stars. Plumlee didn't just nudge him. The veteran center loaded up and slammed into Jared McCain's back, while the latest hero for OKC was caught between setting a pick and turning towards the basket. He was in an awkward position, but Plumlee definitely hit him harder than necessary, with a flying elbow on top of that. It was called a normal foul on the floor, but the NBA upgraded it to a flagrant foul on his record for the playoffs. The league reviewed it overnight. They saw enough to act, but by that point the clip of Wembanyama whispering to both men before they went out there was already everywhere. McCain's reaction told the whole story without him trying to. Speaking on NBA TV after the game, McCain said it was crazy and that he didn't expect it. We were at the free throw line and I was like, why'd you do that, man? He was like, I got another one for you too. It's all competition, but gotta respect it. My team told me after to just get to the corner at the end of the game. That last line, his own team had to tell him to physically remove himself from harm's way. In the closing minutes of a game that was already decided, nobody stayed quiet about it. One fan posted, genuinely, how does the NBA not give him a flagrant for this or fine his ass? Like, this makes no sense. He just gets away with everything. If Draymond Green did this, they would have suspended him. That comparison Draymond kept coming up over and over on social media, in sports bars, in TV studios, because the whole thing looked very familiar to people who had spent years watching Green operate. The velvet glove over the iron fist. The calculated move that nobody can quite prove was calculated. Not everybody went in one direction though. Some fans defended Wembanyama loudly. Wemby wasn't telling them to hurt anyone. He was reminding them that playoff basketball requires physicality, wrote one fan on X. Hard fouls means making sure a guy doesn't get an easy bucket, not headhunting. If you watch the replay, both fouls were hard but clean. Body checks, no extra shoves, no dangerous landings. That's what every coach preaches in a closeout game. That argument has weight. Hard fouls are a normal part of playoff basketball. Every team uses them. Every coach preaches them. The question being asked isn't whether hard fouls are legitimate. It's whether this specific moment looked like something more orchestrated, more deliberate. And then there was the silence, while fans were still speculating about Wembanyama, telling his teammates to hit Jared McCain. The NBA warned him regarding his actions after the game. As reported by ESPN's Shams Charania, he violated the league's media access rules after skipping his post-game media availability and didn't speak to reporters. It was a surprising development since he had always been ready to answer questions, regardless of the game's outcome. The guy voted most media-friendly in the whole league, ghosting. According to The Athletic's Sam Amick, Wemby was voted the most media-friendly player by the Professional Basketball Writers Association, and on the night when every reporter in the building wanted to ask him the same question about the whisper, about Plumlee, about McCain, he wasn't there. The silence made everything louder. The clip had layers that kept rewarding rewatching. This particular instance had taken on a life of its own due to a viral clip of Victor Wembanyama walking off the floor just before it all occurred. The Spurs superstar was trudging off the court after his team had accepted defeat, but before heading to the bench appeared to hold a brief conference with both big men, frame by frame, over and over. People slowing it down, people lip-reading, people tagging their friends. You see this? By the time Game 6 tipped off, millions had watched the clip, and Mike Tirico was reading the transcript of those two words, out loud on a national broadcast. And then Draymond Green picked up the phone, or the podcast mic, more precisely. Because when something happens in the NBA that involves physicality, deliberate fouling, and the question of whether a star player is controlling the dirty work from a safe distance, Draymond Green is going to have an opinion. And not just an opinion, a perspective rooted in experience, because there's nobody in the history of this league who understands that game better than him. He's lived it. He's been punished for it. He's been celebrated for it. And he's watched the entire NBA world treat him differently for it than they're treating this 22-year-old kid from France. So Green said what he thought. Golden State Warriors veteran Draymond Green quickly weighed in on social media to express his disgust. Green quote tweeted a post on X asking how many games would be at stake if he were in Wembanyama's shoes for the same offense. "Y'all have called for my career for less." Green wrote, short, direct, and it lands differently when you know who's saying it and what he's done in his career. This wasn't a random commenter on the internet. This was the man the NBA made into the poster child for precisely this kind of behavior. The man who has been suspended, fined, talked about, broken down, and dissected on television for a decade for playing this exact kind of chess on the basketball floor. That one sentence opened a door, because embedded in "y'all have called for my career for less" is an accusation. Not about what Plumlee did, not about the flagrant foul that got upgraded, about who gave the order, about the guy who was supposed to be the clean one, the transcendent talent, the alien, the face of the league. Green was planting a question in public, the kind of question that doesn't need to be asked out loud to be heard by everyone in the room. The context around that moment matters enormously. Green's frustration was coming from a place of being the poster child for punishment by the NBA, while emerging superstars, like the 7'4" Wembanyama, receive more leniency for almost similar offenses. That's the friction point. That's what gives Green's comment its charge. It's not just about this play. It's about a decade of watching the league decide what is and isn't punishable based on who did it, how beloved they are, and how urgently the league needs them to be a star. And the internet immediately connected it to Game 1 of the NBA Finals. Skip Bayless backed Draymond's concern over Wembanyama after Jalen Brunson's injury scare in Game 1 of the NBA Finals. The New York Knicks' win over the Spurs already had enough drama, but Harrison Barnes falling into Brunson's knee gave the series another flashpoint. Brunson returned and finished the game, yet the moment still created anger because of how close it came to becoming much worse. Green then raised questions about Wembanyama's role in the Spurs' physical edge. And Bayless made clear he was not dismissing the accusation. 2 incidents, 2 separate series, same man at the center, and that's what the conversation became. Not just Wemby told Plumlee to hit McCain, but the bigger, slower building case that there is a pattern here, that behind the extraordinary talent and the $1 million smile and the stat lines that read like a video game glitch, there might be something else operating, something sharp, something strategic, something that Draymond Green, of all people, recognized immediately because it looks exactly like what he's been doing his whole career. The puppet who never gets his hands dirty. The whisper was the start, not the whole story. Because to understand why this clip hit the way it did, why Draymond's reaction hit the way it did, and why the entire basketball world spent the next week arguing about a 22-year-old's character, you have to go back. You have to understand what Wembanyama had already been through in these playoffs, before Game 5 of the conference finals. The elbow, the ejection, the league's decision, and the moment Draymond first decided to take aim. Before the whisper, there was the elbow. And before the elbow, there was a body being beaten to a pulp on a nightly basis. That's the context the Spurs have been screaming about since the second round began. Victor Wembanyama, 7'4", stretching 235 pounds across that preposterous wingspan, was walking into a different physical reality every single playoff night. Teams had figured out the blueprint. You can't stop the alien, but you can wear him down. You can grab him. You can hang on his arms. You can make the referees decide how many times they'll call it before they just let it go. The Timberwolves went hardest at this. With just 235 pounds stretched the length of his 88-inch frame, the lean and lanky Frenchman still needed to get stronger. 3 years into his NBA career. Until then, opponents would try to push, bang, and foul him as much as possible, inflicting pain, sure, but also to get into Wembanyama's head. Those tactics are nothing to be proud of, but the playoffs are the whatever, it takes time of the year. Minnesota had Julius Randle. They had Naz Reid. They had Jaden McDaniels, wiry and physical, and absolutely willing to get in Wembanyama's space on every single possession. Victor Wembanyama leveled Naz Reid by slamming his right elbow into the Minnesota forward's neck. After getting sandwiched in a rough double team, Timberwolves fans were irate, while the Spurs and their faithful feared the worst. That's exactly what they got too. After the game officials and the replay center reviewed Wembanyama's emotional, reflexive response, they assessed a flagrant 2 foul, automatically disqualifying the Spurs center from the 32 minutes or so left in Game 4. After a video review of the play, with the fans at Target Center chanting, "Kick him out, kick him out," the foul was upgraded to a flagrant 2 for excessive contact above the neck. That penalty triggers an automatic ejection, immediately swinging the balance of a pivotal game in the series toward the Timberwolves. And what did Wembanyama do when he found out? He dapped up every teammate and walked off. A man sentenced before he knew his crime. Calm, almost eerie. When the penalty was announced, Wembanyama appeared to ask teammate Harrison Barnes, "What does that mean?" In the instant before Wembanyama swung that elbow at Reid crowding behind him, he had been bopped in the face by the Wolves' Jaden McDaniels and had McDaniels hanging with both hands on his left arm. So, grabbed on one arm, fouled in the face, then swings an elbow. The sequence matters. And the Spurs made sure everyone understood the sequence. Spurs guard Dylan Harper said, "You could see the frustration. I don't think it was intentional. It was more like they keep grabbing me. I'm trying to protect myself because ain't no one else going to protect me." The Spurs head coach, in his post-game press conference, walked a specific line. He didn't endorse the elbow, but he did something that raised eyebrows. Johnson said he was glad that Wembanyama took matters into his own hands, but added that he was concerned about the level of physicality. Just the amount of physicality that people play with him. At some level, you have to protect yourself. Every single play on every single part of the floor. People are trying to impose their physicality on you. He's gotten pushed down in transition, running freely. We don't complain because we're just going to play. We don't really give a damn. But at some stage, he should be protected. If not, he's going to have to protect himself. And unfortunately, stuff like that happens. A head coach, glad his star player threw an elbow into an opponent's throat during a playoff game. That's not just defending a player, that's sending a message. The Spurs were putting the league on notice. Don't call this alone. Call the whole game. Call all of it. Call what happens to Wemby every night. And then we'll talk about one elbow in a tense moment. The framing was deliberate, and it landed. There would be no further discipline for Spurs star Victor Wembanyama after he was ejected for elbowing Naz Reid in Minnesota on Sunday night. Sources told ESPN, no suspension, no fine. Wembanyama would play in Game 5 against the Timberwolves on Tuesday night in San Antonio. The ejection was the punishment. The game swung on it. Minnesota won Game 4, tied the series, and the decision to not add to it was the league essentially agreeing with the Spurs. Draymond Green didn't just speak once. That's what people missed in the initial reaction to the whisper clip. Green had been tracking Wembanyama all postseason. That's a very different question. And that's the question Draymond planted. Reggie Miller saw it too, in real time. NBC analyst Reggie Miller mentioned that McCain shouldn't have been in the game, in garbage minutes after the 2 fouls. See, these are 2 shots to McCain in here. In the starting lineup, in the closing moments of this game, Miller said, he doesn't need to be on the floor here. The message was, OKC made a mistake keeping their guy in. But underneath that message is the acknowledgement that what happened to him was deliberate enough, that a broadcast analyst was warning against letting it continue. The broadcast revealed Wembanyama's exact words during Game 6. The new clip of Wembanyama from Game 5 surfaced during Game 6, with Wembanyama seeming to mouth hard foul to Plumlee. Hard foul was the message sent to Mason Plumlee, Bismack Biyombo, and you saw just that. Tirico said during the Spurs' eventual 118-91 win. That moment, a national broadcaster naming the words on the floor of the conference finals, while the series was still live, is one of those you don't forget, because it wasn't a rumor anymore. It wasn't lip-reading amateurs on X. It was the lead play-by-play voice of the NBA Finals broadcast, telling you directly what Victor Wembanyama said. So by the time Game 1 of the finals arrived, the story had legs. Harrison Barnes falling into Brunson's knee gave the series another flashpoint. Brunson returned and finished the game, yet the moment still created anger. Because of how close it came to becoming much worse, that contact sent Brunson to the locker room. He came back. He played through it. But the image of one of basketball's most important players clutching his knee, while his team held its breath in the finals, that image did not go away quickly. And the internet did exactly what you knew it would do. It connected the dots. Brunson, McCain. The same series, the same whisper, the same pattern. Were these just hard playoff fouls, the kind that happen in every series? Or was there a man in a San Antonio uniform quietly directing traffic from the sideline, making sure that the players most dangerous to his team understood there were physical consequences for being dangerous? That's the question Draymond Green answered with 6 words, and now it was everywhere. Skip Bayless stepped in and made it louder. Bayless reacted to Draymond Green's comments after Harrison Barnes fell into Jalen Brunson, tying the Victor Wembanyama debate to an earlier Jared McCain controversy. Here we go again with Wembanyama being accused of and appearing to tell teammates to go get an opposing player, first Jared McCain, now Jalen Brunson. Bayless wrote, "Then I believe that in this case, Draymond knows what he's talking about." Such a bad look for the new face of the league. Draymond knows what he's talking about. That is a specific endorsement. Not this looks suspicious. Not the league should investigate. Bayless, who has spent years hammering Draymond from every angle, was saying that when it comes to this particular game, the psychological chess of how a player can control the physical tone without touching anyone himself, Draymond Green is the most credible voice in the building, and he is saying Wembanyama is doing it. What Draymond actually knows and why it matters. You don't understand why Draymond's accusation has the weight it does, unless you understand what Draymond has been. Not just the best defensive player of his generation, not just a 4-time champion, but specifically the player who bent the NBA's idea of what was and wasn't acceptable physicality, who found every edge of the rulebook and lived inside it, who threw elbows and grabbed jerseys and set screens that weren't screens, and talked in players' ears until they lost their composure, who got ejected from a finals game, who got suspended without pay, who had his name turned into shorthand for a type of player. That experience is the credential. When Draymond Green says he recognizes what Wembanyama is doing, the delegation, the instruction to the big men on the way out, The clean hands while the dirty work gets done. He's not speculating. He's identifying. He built that mechanism himself over 15 years. He knows exactly what it looks like. And the moment he saw that clip, he knew. Green's frustration was coming from a place of being the poster child for punishment by the NBA. While emerging superstars like the 7'4" Wembanyama received more leniency for almost similar offenses. That leniency is the core wound here. Green has been the cautionary tale. The before photo and every "this is what happens when you're too physical" lesson the league teaches its players. His career has been punctuated by discipline, by having his contract situations complicated by reputation when they're negotiating protection for their clients. He is the price of that style of play. And watching Wembanyama absorb multiple incidents, the SGA legs play, the Naz Reid elbow, the Plumlee whisper without facing comparable consequences is not something Green is going to stay quiet about. The double standard is real, and it isn't simple. Part of what makes this story uncomfortable is that both things can be true. Wembanyama is being held to a lower standard right now because he's new, because his reputation hasn't calcified yet, because the league genuinely needs him to be a star. And also he is being subjected to physical tactics that the league has not adequately protected him from. Both things are happening. Draymond lived on the wrong side of this equation for years. He sees both sides with clarity nobody else in this conversation has. The Warriors' history makes this even richer. Those Golden State teams, the dynasty, the championships, the era, were built partly on this exact kind of basketball. Calculated physicality. Setting the tone early. Making opponents understand there was a cost to attacking the rim. Green was the architect of that defensive identity. And Steve Kerr, who coaches those teams and knows every wrinkle of that approach, watched it win championships. The Spurs under Mitch Johnson are doing something similar, with a completely different personnel set. But the philosophical DNA is recognizable. And then there's the question nobody in the mainstream media wanted to ask directly. Is what Wembanyama doing? If you accept the framing that he is doing it wrong, not just against the rules, but wrong, because hard fouls are legal. Telling teammates to play physical is legal. Even specifically targeting an opponent's key player for extra physicality, that's legal. The line is injury intent. And that line is impossible to prove. You can upgrade Plumlee's foul to a flagrant. You can't upgrade a whispered instruction to a crime. Draymond knew this. That's why his comment was 6 words, not 60. Green quickly weighed in on social media to express his disgust. He quote tweeted a post on X asking how many games would be at stake if he were in Wembanyama's shoes. "Y'all have called for my career for less," Green wrote. He didn't write a paragraph. He didn't make a specific accusation. He planted a seed in 6 words and let the internet do the rest, and this is the part that makes your head spin, exactly the kind of move he was accusing Wembanyama of making. Delegate the dirty work. Keep your own hands clean. The reaction from other players was telling in a different way. Nobody from OKC came out screaming. McCain himself kept it cool, even after those fouls, after Plumlee said, "I got another one for you too" at the free throw line. The dominant tone from the Thunder camp was measured. They were up in the series. They had bigger problems. If the Thunder felt the Spurs went out of their way to be physical at the end of Game 5, they were going to come into Game 6 looking to send a message of their own, even while holding a 3-2 lead. That's how it works in the playoffs. No press conferences, no public outrage, just the next game. The Spurs' position was equally clear, even without speaking directly to the controversy. Wembanyama and the Spurs rejected the idea that their physicality crossed a line, and the NBA had not confirmed any wrongdoing. That's the official position. Deny nothing, confirm nothing, let the lawyers handle it. The team that wins is usually the one that doesn't get distracted by the noise. And Wembanyama, despite the missed media session after Game 5, didn't say anything. That confirmed the accusation or directly addressed Draymond's comments. He let his basketball do the talking, or tried to, because then came the NBA Finals, and the basketball wasn't talking loudly enough. Wembanyama finished with 26 points, 12 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, and 3 blocks, over 38 minutes during Game 1's 105-95 loss to the Knicks. In addition to the poor shooting, Wembanyama also committed a game-high 6 turnovers, and he acknowledged after the game that it wasn't his best performance. 6 turnovers. The Knicks hit him differently, not just physically, mentally. The weight of the moment, the final stage, the conversation swirling around his character. Some of it showed, and what he said after might be the most honest thing in this entire story. After Game 1, Wembanyama said, per Spurs reporter Tom Petrini, "I'm gonna figure it out. I was bad tonight. It's not more complicated than that. No excuses, no deflection. No the refs or the physicality, or I've been unfairly targeted all playoffs. Just, I was bad, I'll fix it." That's not the response of a player rattled by the noise. That's the response of a player who has absorbed everything. The ejection, the whisper controversy, the Draymond shots, the Bayless column, the national broadcast lip reading, and filed it away. He was different in Game 2. Wembanyama finished with 29 points and 9 rebounds in Game 2, a 105-104 loss. It was a tale of two halves, held to just 7 points in the first half, before erupting for 22 after the break. The Spurs still lost, down 0-2. But the player was back, the aggression was back, the decisive moves to the rim, the shot making from the elbow. That's the Wembanyama people paid to watch, and notably no incidents, no whispers caught on camera, no elbows above the neck, just basketball. The finals, the fallout, and what this postseason reveals about Wembanyama. Here's where we actually are with Wembanyama right now. He's 22 years old, he's in the NBA Finals. He just became, by a wide margin, the youngest defensive player of the year in league history. He was on a tear in the Western Conference Finals playoffs, dropping 41 points in Game 1 of that series and continuing to rack it up from there. He scored nearly 200 points across the 7 games, making a massive impact on both ends of the court as the Spurs won the conference title. The basketball case for him is overwhelming. The character case is more complicated. And it got complicated entirely in this postseason, over a 2-month window, through a series of moments that each individually might be explained away, but together form something harder to dismiss. The Spurs beating the Thunder in Game 7 was the moment the basketball world truly recalibrated what this team is. San Antonio entered the finals facing a Knicks team on the best 14-game playoff run in NBA history, in a rematch of the 1999 finals that Tim Duncan won at 22 years old. Wembanyama was also 22, Stephon Castle at 21, Devin Vassell at 25, Dylan Harper at 20, and Julian Champagnie at 24 were playing well beyond their years. Many were skeptical a team with 5 rotation players so young could take down the Thunder. They were wrong. The youngest core in finals history had made it there, and they'd made it there through a postseason full of controversy, physical confrontations, and moments that had generated more headlines than nearly any other team in the league. The Brunson incident during Finals Game 1 is worth examining carefully. Harrison Barnes falling into Brunson's knee gave the series another flashpoint. Brunson returned and finished the game, yet the moment still created anger, because of how close it came to becoming much worse. This one was different from the McCain situation in a crucial way. Barnes lost balance. It wasn't a targeted hard foul in garbage time. It was a collision during live play. But the problem is that context had already been poisoned by what happened in the conference finals. Every hard play involving a Spur now carried Wembanyama's whisper as background noise. That's what a pattern does. It reframes everything that comes after. The reason Green's comments carried weight was the earlier McCain episode. During the Western Conference Finals, Wembanyama was accused by fans and analysts of signaling teammates before hard contact on Jared McCain. Though nothing was officially proven, that history made the Brunson moment easier for critics to connect. That sentence is the entire mechanical explanation of how reputations are built and destroyed in real time. It didn't matter whether Harrison Barnes meant to fall into Brunson's knee. What mattered was that there was already a file on Wembanyama, and every new incident, however ambiguous, goes in the file. Draymond Green understood this better than anyone. He's watched his own file grow for 15 years. The people defending Wembanyama have a legitimate case. His reaction was completely understandable, based on how physical these games had been, and what the Wolves and the Trailblazers in the first round had done to pound Wembanyama out of his comfort zone. He is the most targeted player in these playoffs. Teams have deployed hack-a-Shaq-style physicality not at the free throw line, but everywhere. On cuts, on screens, on the fast break, in transition. The league has not adequately protected him. The Spurs coach said it. Multiple analysts said it. The victims of Wembanyama's retaliations read, most prominently acknowledged the context. But here's the thing about hard fouls. The words that came out of Wembanyama's mouth in the final 2 minutes of Game 5 were not beat this guy or hurt this guy, or anything that crosses into malicious territory by the letter of any rule. They were hard foul. 2 words that every coach uses, 2 words that every player understands as part of the vocabulary of playoff basketball. The question is whether in this specific context, against this specific player, who was the key to OKC's survival in the series, those words carried an extra weight, an implied weight, and that implication is the thing Draymond was pointing at. Bayless's point was about perception as much as proof. For a player being framed as the league's future, even the suggestion that teammates are being sent to go get opponents is damaging. And that's the lasting consequence of this postseason. Not any fine, not any suspension, not any flag on any specific play. It's the fact that the conversation around Wembanyama now includes this, that there are people who watched these playoffs and came away thinking there is something calculating about him that doesn't fit. The cherubic, humble, stat line machine image, that the alien from France might also be a student of the game, in ways the league didn't expect from a 22-year-old in his first playoffs. The comparison to Draymond is not just an insult, it's also a compliment. And this is where the whole conversation gets genuinely interesting, because Draymond Green, for all the suspensions and fines and controversies, and Midnight Podcast hot takes won 4 championships. He was the engine of the most dominant team of his era. He was indispensable precisely because of the basketball intelligence that also made him dangerous. The ability to see a game 3 moves ahead. The ability to control a physical tone without necessarily being the most physical player on the floor. If Wembanyama is starting to develop that dimension, that chess master quality that makes the superstar more than just a scorer, that is not something to panic about. It is something to pay attention to. The legacy of this postseason for Wembanyama isn't about the whisper. It's about the fact that at 22, in his first playoffs, he led a young Spurs team past the defending champions and into the NBA Finals. He won Defensive Player of the Year. He's averaging extraordinary numbers on the biggest stage in his sport. He recorded a double-double in the Conference Finals series, and the 2025-26 Defensive Player of the Year stepped up on both ends of the floor, finishing with 3 blocks and 2 steals in multiple contests. The numbers are real. The moments are real. The basketball is real, and the controversy also real. Victor Wembanyama faced criticism online after a controversial sequence late in Game 5 led to comparisons with Golden State Warriors forward Draymond Green. He didn't plan that. He didn't choose to be compared to the most complicated player of his generation in the same breath as becoming the most celebrated young talent of his generation. But here we are, 2 games into the NBA Finals, down 0-2 to New York. The whisper clip still circulating, Draymond still on podcasts, Bayless still tweeting the noise isn't going away. What goes away is every series eventually. The Spurs are going to play this finals out. Wembanyama is going to either win a championship or go home and spend the summer getting stronger and thinking about everything that happened in his first postseason. The McCain incident, the Brunson incident, the ejection, the Draymond shots, all of it will be part of his story. Not a chapter that ends him, a chapter that defines what kind of player he's becoming. Whether the hard foul instruction was tactical genius or a line crossed, that's a judgment each person watching this gets to make. What's not a judgment, it's a fact, is that Draymond Green saw something, and Draymond Green doesn't see things in other players that aren't there. He's too smart for that, and too invested in being right, and too aware of what his credibility costs him when he's wrong. When he said, "Y'all have called for my career for less," he wasn't having an emotional reaction. He was making a precise statement about a precise kind of play. And the kid from France, who everyone expected to spend his first playoffs getting dominated before ascending gradually over the next few years, that kid responded to being targeted all postseason by doing the most Draymond Green thing imaginable. He kept his hands clean and whispered 2 words. The Spurs are 0-2 in the finals. The story isn't finished. The Spurs are facing a 0-2 deficit with the series heading to New York for Game 3 on Monday. They've been down before in these playoffs. They came back from adversity in the Minnesota series. They won a Game 7 against the defending champions, And Wembanyama, who looked off in Game 1 and much better in Game 2, is the kind of talent that makes a 0-2 deficit feel less permanent than it would for anyone else. The basketball question for the rest of this finals is simple. Can he be extraordinary enough to overcome both the Knicks and the weight of everything this postseason has put on his name? The character question is more interesting and longer lasting. Did the first postseason of his career reveal not just a generational player, but a generational operator? The answers are still being written in New York, one whisper at a time.